how well were you able to learn to accept the losses and learn to appreciate what you had,
right,
versus allowing those incredibly painful touch points of life to swallow you,
yeah,
and to keep you from continuing to live this very limited life that you have, this short space of time you're here. Last time we forgot to talk about Quan's dwelling.
We did.
It's an area next to Trino.
Didn't go there.
You didn't go there?
No, apparently there's something you can get there. Right?
Well, yeah, there's one of the, what do they call them? The stiletto.
The stilettos, yeah, because I didn't have all those.
Coins.
Yeah.
You can get that there at this point. So, of course, this will be an area you can come back and visit later in the game.
Right.
But Quan's dwelling is a cave. I'm not sure which cardinal direction exactly it is from Trino, but just close by to Trino. There's a little forest that leads back into a bit of a cove, and then there's a cave there, which is where Quan, Vivi's grandfather, lived. So you go in there, and there's the clock, and there's tables, and a person lived in there, and we would assume Vivi did also for a while. But this is his grandfather, who he's been referring to. This is where Vivi was essentially raised by Quan. There's not necessarily a ton to discuss on this yet, but there are a few items that you can pick up here, one of them being the stiletto that you can take back, the coin that you can take back to, what's her name? Forget her name. Stella, I think.
Yeah.
But we will be returning here later in the game, and there will be some scenes with Vivi, and so we'll talk about it more in depth at another time, but there were some people asking about that. And yes, it's there. We'll come back and talk about it more when it's a little bit more relevant, but that is where Quan went in his banishment after he left whatever marsh that he and Quail lived in or grew up in or whatever their tribe comes from. He left and went to live in this cave, and that's where somehow he came across Vivi. There is one really funny line. You can read some, I don't know, he wrote it down maybe on a piece of paper. Vivi's still too small to eat or something like
that. So why does Vivi speak normal, but was raised by a person who speaks completely broken?
That's a good question. Yeah. Vivi's, his actual kind of discovery and then his early life is not necessarily detailed. We just know that at some point Quan found him.
Right.
And he began developing his individuality there. But why did he leave? How did he end up in Alexandria? Like, what was the impetus to all this? We'll learn more about it, I think, a little bit later. But as of right now, a lot of that's still very mysterious.
Yeah.
But anyway, Quan's dwelling is there. So just wanted to quickly mention that. So this is a little bit back for us in terms of what we've played up to, but we have not covered yet. So figured we could start by talking about the Burmesians and then the kind of history and maybe the relationship between Burmesia and Cleyra.
Okay, cool.
So there's kind of a lot here that I want to talk through. Hopefully, like, it will at least coincide somewhat with some of your notes. But there's a couple of things that I thought were important to take note of with some of this info. So Burmesia, don't know necessarily exactly when this kingdom was formed, but what is important is to know that the desert star, the little crystal,
it's like a jewel. Yeah,
jewel is probably the right word for it, that we find in Cleyra during this section of the game that is sort of up
over the harp.
In the harp.
Yeah.
Originally was entrusted to the Burmesians.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Huh. So they had that first. It was given to them for safekeeping. The question of its ownership became a contested matter that led to a civil war in Burmesia. And those who were dissatisfied with this sort of war culture that was developing there separated from that main populace and migrated into the desert to form Cleyra. So it was a place where Burmesians who were not happy with sort of the direction the government was moving with the warlike culture there left to sort of like form a haven of sorts to get away from that.
That makes sense. So that's why the Burmesians are still mostly warriors, but then in Cleyra, it's like that's where the church is.
Yes.
It's a bunch of clergy people.
Right.
It's a bunch of old people, and they aren't very good at fighting.
Yeah, they're not necessarily warriors or fighters because they're protected by that sandstorm.
They don't need that.
Yeah, they have a different form.
Well, hold on. They don't think they need that.
They don't think they need it. That's a good point. So they are two separate nations, but they share the same heritage. They come originally all from Burmesia. And that desert star, that jewel, was brought to Cleyra from Burmesia. So now the Cleyrans keep that. Okay. And it's what powers the sandstorm that shields the city from the outside world. So around 100 years before the game begins, there was another civil war in Burmesia that finally caused Cleyra to sever all ties from the mother country. The nations of Burmesia and Alexandria waged many wars after that. The most recent one was initiated by Burmesia between 30 and 40 years ago. And so the reason I bring all of this up is to talk about what's called a dummied piece of content. Have you ever heard of that term before, a dummied piece of content?
I don't think so.
It refers to content that still is on the disc of the game, but is cut from the game.
I've heard of this.
So
this kind of
data miners and that sort of thing can go find this stuff on the disc, so it's still there, exists, it's written there, but it was cut from the main game. So there's an interesting piece of dummied content that Steiner says all the way back in Dolly that I wanted to talk about a little bit here. But before I do that, I want to do a bit of a precursor on how seriously or not one should take dummied content.
You don't know when it was cut.
Yes.
It could have been early on.
Yes.
I would say maybe, gosh, like for the Super Nintendo, the content limitations allowing for only such a certain amount of text meant that there was probably not a whole ton of dummied content on those. But with the PS1 discs, all of a sudden, the text limitation stopped being so much of an issue. So they could just kind of leave words laying around on the disc and just say, well, we don't reference it. It doesn't matter. We don't have to clean it up because we have enough memory to work with. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Who cares about the text, right? So it could have been cut way early on, or it could have been intended to have been there, but just cut last minute kind of thing.
Yes.
And you never really know.
You never really know. That's kind of the point I'm going to make is you don't really know why something was cut.
That's right.
You do know why it wasn't cut. It wasn't cut because of memory limitations or some other limitation of the hardware or something like
because it's on the disc.
Because it's on the disc.
Yeah. So
if it's on the disc, that's not the reason.
Yeah.
So it wasn't cut because of a limitation. It was cut for some other purposeful reason, which we do not know.
Right.
So I think it's always important to take dummied content with a grain of salt.
Right.
Because some people want to try to use dummied content as evidence for this or this being true about the story.
Right.
Others say, no, it was cut for a reason because they were trying to remove that idea as being canon for the story and whatnot.
It didn't fit. Maybe it's Sakaguchi himself who said, no, we don't want that line in there. A scenario writer wrote it, and it got programmed in, and then Sakaguchi cut it. That's a potential explanation for things like that.
Sure.
And you don't want to include that into your world building for, for the lore of the game.
Right. So Final Fantasy IX doesn't have nearly the amount of dummied content that Final Fantasy VII or VIII do. They have a lot more. And when we cover Final Fantasy VII in the future, there's going to be a lot of stuff that will be interesting in terms of dummied content to consider as far as like how may that or may not apply to how we understand the world.
I see.
But
just take it with a grain of salt.
It must always be done first with acknowledging this was cut for a reason.
Yeah.
So this line from Steiner to Morid, who is not in the main village of Dali, but that little windmill kind of off to the side of it.
Yeah.
He's the guy who loves to drink the coffee.
Yeah, he's up in that tall mountain.
Right. So he's talking to him. And it's during the ATE when Steiner's still running around trying to find information about how they can get back to Alexandria.
Okay.
And he's pressing him about when does the cargo ship arrive?
Right.
And the guy won't answer his question. He's like, I freaking command you to tell me when it's coming. And he has that line where he says,
you're green, you're still green.
Yeah, you're still green as a pickle. And what was it? It was something like, who decides who's right or wrong?
Right,
you?
right, something like that.
And Steiner was like, oh, everyone knows what's right or wrong, right? Yeah. So it's during that conversation. So Moritz starts with, I love the smell of coffee. It relaxes me. How about a cup? Steiner says, oh, thank you. No, I'm not here to drink coffee. Tell me when the cargo ship will arrive, or else Alexandrian royal family will appropriate this property. Moritz says, and then what? Steiner says, I order you to tell me when the cargo ship will arrive. Tell me! And Moritz says, you're not a very creative interrogator.
Right.
And Steiner says, I'm just trying to do what is right.
Yeah.
Moritz said, who decides what's right and wrong? You? Steiner, anyone can tell what's right or wrong. Moritz, still green as a pickle. So all of that is still in the game. None of that was cut. That's the next line from Steiner is what was cut. Alexandria, of course, Burmecia started the war, and we lost our king as a result. So there is something there, but the last war that was fought between Alexandria and Burmecia, the Burmecians started it.
They started it, but Alexandria won.
Alexandria seems to have won, or there was some kind of, I don't know.
Fair enough, compromise.
Which you would,
With
compromise,
38th parallel,
I don't know what you'd call it for medieval war. It's not a ceasefire. It's
it's a word, we're tired and we're done.
We're just like, we agree to stop fighting for now.
Right.
So that happened at some point in the past. But in this dummied piece of content, it is suggested that perhaps this is how the king of Burmecia, the Bronze husband, was killed.
30 years prior?
Yeah. So not to say that that's definitive, concrete lore, but the Burmecians last time were the ones initiating. This time, obviously, Alexandria is initiating. But before you get into what you're about to say,
have questions.
There's a really interesting thing to consider here about how in the past, there's sort of this unprecedented era of peace right now that coincides with the invention of airships. Before that, there were lots and lots of wars on the Mist continent. Back when everyone lived and walked around down in the mist.
It's like everyone was more paranoid back then and suspicious.
Yes.
And as soon as they can rise above the mist, they also rise above their petty conflicts.
So there is probably a connection between the warmongering and the violent history of the Mist continent and being in the mist all the time. This would make sense given that it has effects on animals and turns them into monsters and these sorts of things.
It can do the same to humans.
So with Lindblum inventing the airships and getting people up out of the mist, there is kind of this era of peace. And they start developing technology to try to get away from mist-powered tech.
Right.
They want to use steam-powered stuff now.
Right.
So the mist itself is just a really interesting sort of thing to consider here among the relations of these countries and many wars that they used to fight at one time. Now, we have already talked about how in Burmecia, they have this sort of constant rainfall. I don't know if it's necessarily confirmed anywhere in the game's text necessarily, but that sort of keeps that mist at bay there. It sort of like brings it down, like pollution in the air gets kind of pushed down by rain.
Right, yeah.
But that is the only civilization left down in the mist. Every other city is up in elevated places above the mist at this point. Right. Cleyra is in a giant tree with the wind storm, the sandstorm that swirls around it. And even like Trino is up on the plateaus, Alexandria's up high, Lindblum is up high. So it seems that in moving up above the mist, an era of peace kind of followed that lasted a pretty long time until now. Bronn, for some reason, that Garnet is suspicious about, is acting strangely, and this is leading to this warlike mindset, and she's trying to conquer and invade, enemy territories or neighboring territories, I should say.
Yeah. So if this was 30 years prior, and that's Bronn's husband, you say? Because she is widowed, it seems.
Well, I don't know how...
Garnet, how do they sell to the people that Garnet...
It seems that... because Garnet's 16 years old, so we can go back at least 16-ish years.
Yeah.
Unless...
Her father would have had to have been alive at least 17 years ago.
So however long this war was fought, it says that it started 30 to 40 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
But I don't know how long they continued fighting or when that war ended necessarily.
That makes sense.
But we do know, how long ago was it that the airships were invented? Because that would have been Sid's father's era, Sid the Eighth.
And they use like the years, like 1790 and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that super well. I don't know what year we're currently in within the game, but it's probably 18-something, 1807 maybe.
Whether or not we know the exact year time period, this might have been part of the reason why the line was cut, who knows, to try to like line up and make the timeline make sense. But in the dummied piece of content, this was how we lost our king, was in this last war with Burmecia.
Right.
That started something like 30, 40 years ago. Whatever, however long it lasted, I don't know.
It almost sounds like within the line as well that maybe Steiner was going to have had foreknowledge of an attempted attack against Burmecia. Because why else is he bringing up Burmecia right now? It doesn't make sense.
Right. It kind of does feel out of left field.
Yeah, it's like, those darn Burmecians. It's like, interesting.
Yeah. So after he says that, we lost our king as a result. Morid says, many wars were fought before the Lindblum airship revolution. Alexandria initiated some of the wars against Burmecia. Now can you tell me who was right or wrong? And then Steiner goes, I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about the future. Moritz says, what will you do if Alexandria starts a war? Steiner, when will the cargo ship arrive? He starts, this is where it gets back into the non-dummied content where it's...
Yeah.
So those two lines between Steiner and Morid were cut. But it's interesting. I like it because it even more cemently, I feel like, sets up or begins the foundation of Steiner's questioning his sense of right and wrong, and whether or not he should be, or whether or not it's right to question the Queen's orders.
Because he's not thinking that far in the past when he says, well, they are the ones who started it. It's like, did the whole world and all of history start 30 years ago? Or was there possibly another conflict prior to that one?
Yeah.
And Steiner's like, well, it doesn't matter who started that one. And he's obviously out of his depth there. But I actually like that the lines were cut because it's introducing things that we shouldn't quite know about yet.
Yeah.
I like the idea that Burmecia, and this is mostly from Dagger's perspective, but that Burmecia is attacked completely out of the blue, like absolutely unjustly. Like it makes no sense. Why in the world is Bronn doing this? And I think it's maybe better that it's not hinted at that might happen. Oh, what if Alexandria starts another war soon? At this point, we really have no reason to suspect that Bronn is going to start a whole war right now. She may be looking for her daughter, and going to whatever lengths to find her daughter, but a whole new war, and this kind of softens that what otherwise is a very like intense moment when like, holy cow, she's starting a war now. Like this is insane.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of like
I think I agree with you on that. Yeah.
And also to mention Burmecia, it's just they're getting ahead of themselves here. I think it's better to just kind of leave it how they left it.
Yeah. So that conflict was eventually resolved peacefully when Lindblum intervened with its airship armada, an event that became known as the Airship Revolution. The three countries established a diplomatic relationship, marking the end of a long series of wars that had plagued the Mist Continent. So we know that they have the Desert Star, but we're not going to talk more about what that is or where it came from just yet. So there was a civil war fought over the ownership of that jewel, and a group of fundamentalists eventually took the crystal, the Desert Star, and founded Cleyra in the Vube Desert around 100 years before the time of the game. Following another civil war in Burmecia, Cleyra severed its ties to the outside world and remained isolated behind its sandstorm. So, just wanted to kind of set up some of that. I think, in particular, it's interesting to consider that this move out of the mist is what sort of started a longer era of peace, but that there were lots and lots of wars fought in the Mist Continent prior to that move out. And that move out was initiated by the Airship Revolution. So, just wanted to quickly go over that real quick. I think it's important to keep all that in mind as we move through the story here.
Lindblum would have become by far the wealthiest place in the whole continent.
And it looks like it did. If you walk through the city, it looks like it's the most advanced, the most wealthy.
The biggest, the tallest. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't take a lot of notes in Cleyra, like as you're moving up the trunk and getting into the little village itself up top, until learning that Puck, the little rat kid from the beginning,
he's the prince.
Is the prince of Burmecia. I didn't take many notes before that. So if you have notes before that happens.
I don't. No, I don't, except for to say that they appear to worship the sandstorm itself, which is interesting because it makes me wonder what these religious people were like prior to this sandstorm, or if Burmecia had something of a sandstorm, although it's always raining there. So this would be like a mud storm. They just had this mud storm protecting them all the time. Probably not. But I don't know if they worship the sandstorm, yet the sandstorm kind of started at the same time that they left. It feels like maybe their religion was something else 100 years ago. And then they found the sandstone, and then they left. And now it's slowly evolved into, we now just worship the stone, right? It keeps us safe. It protects us. It provides us comfort and keeps the mist away. That is what we now worship. But I would say that can't have been so from the beginning, although it's possible that Burmecia had a sandstorm around it as well.
Oh, yeah. You're saying back when the jewel was in
when they
Burmecia.
stole it and left. Because the article there you were citing referenced them as fundamentalists. Fundamentalists for what? That's just kind of like my
for
general
not fighting
question.
wars.
There you go. Yeah, that makes you a fundamentalist, right? I don't know. It's whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's a good point.
They liked the jewel. Maybe they always worshipped the jewel, but what it did maybe changed.
Yeah, having stolen the jewel, I would assume that it would be something around not using that jewel for war.
Yeah,
but rather for
hippie
peace or for protection.
Well, it's attached to a musical instrument,
something like that,
which is interesting. Where they're like, "Let peace and love reign, man." You know, they're playing their music, and that this is going to change the world. But meanwhile, they've kind of really just isolated themselves, and they're not really doing much there. Based on the story you just read, it sounds like they probably all would have been better together. But the anti-war fundamentalists really just couldn't stay in that culture anymore. Yeah. And you can see it with Freya and the Dragoon Knights. Like clearly, even when you go to Burmecia, it's like, these are kind of like the Spartans. This is like the whole economy here is war, and peace is not good for them. Yeah. It's not conducive to their economy. So they had to split. But I just kind of wonder what exactly they were worshiping before that. But by the time they're out here, they're worshiping the sandstorm itself. They come out to pray to it. They have these branches that have the best view of it. And it's very interesting. I think it's very cool, actually.
Yeah. It's also interesting that, however, it's been quite a while that Cleyra seems to have totally disassociated with Burmesian. Separated entirely, no relations. We don't talk to you anymore. Yet
100 years.
So
that's
welcoming of the Burmesians who flee.
Yeah, so
the Burmesians who flee from this, who are refugees from this war with Alexandria, the Cleyrans sort of accept them with open arms. So their shared heritage is still important to them.
Yes, it's like, these are my cousins, and let's bring them in.
So they bring them in, and they don't seem to have any problem with that. It is interesting. There is some dialogue between Burmesian NPCs or Cleyran NPCs as you're kind of going through the village, where they talk about each other a little bit and like, these damn Cleyrans, or sometimes even, wow, these Cleyrans are so nice, or something like that. Sure. They have a different demeanor, a different way of carrying themselves than we're used to.
Yeah, just pointing out there are differences. They've spent enough time apart to where there are legitimate differences between them. Yeah. And the Cleyrans probably think, there probably would have been a lot of Cleyrans saying, don't let them in, because they're going to bring their war with them. And that was true. That was totally true. But they let them in anyways, because, there's an affinity towards each other, and it's not a culture that's that crazy different. And they're like, these are our cousins. 100 years ago is out of living memory. At least I'm assuming they live humans-ish lifespans.
I would agree with that, probably,
But it's not so far outside of it that, like, you wouldn't still have cousins or have memories or have been told stories about them and all that.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, we left them, but we didn't want to. Like, we still love them, but they want to kill people and we don't, so we're gone. But they're still our brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So, interesting place. I love the tree, too, just in general.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a tree. It seems kind of opposite from Burmecia in a lot of ways. And not only just the fact that Burmecia is always raining and Cleyra is dust storm means it's always dry, right? That's pretty different. But the Burmesians have, the handiwork and the masonry and the stones, whereas the Cleyrans are living in this natural habitat of just like this massive tree, like a Malorn tree from Lothlorien. Yeah. And this is where they live, and it's more, well, I'd say grounded, but it's farther from the ground in that sense. But it's more naturally grounded, I suppose, that like we're living off of nature itself. It's just a fascinating culture. I really like it.
Yeah, another thing that I thought was pretty cool was it has sort of a self-sustaining system that is all powered and driven by this sandstorm, which is, of course, powered by the Desert Star. So this sandstorm, the energy that comes from it, is essentially what creates the ability for them to draw and purify water, which runs through their village, even though they're way up out of the, off the ground, like you were saying. So they have it's a cool fantasy location.
Very,
And I think walking through it and exploring it, the backgrounds are really beautiful here. And there's a couple of interesting ATEs to watch, with Vivi in particular.
Yeah, once again, everyone separates as soon as we get into the tree.
Yes.
That's fun.
And Vivi is really struggling with people hating him just on sight.
Yeah.
Based obviously on the fact that black mages have attacked the Burmesians. And so
killed
I
their
especially liked the one where you have like the father and the family, the Burmesian family.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You bastard, you killed my brother," or something like that. And then the wife comes in, "You bastard." And then the two kids, "You bastard, you bastard."
Yeah,
like they all run in yelling it at him.
Yeah.
I loved that little detail.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It's like instilling that hate into the next generation.
Yeah.
And Vivi's like, "I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't do anything." And he's really struggling. And you walk into that inn where that scene takes place and walk over to him, and he's just hanging his head like, "No, I didn't do anything wrong." So they're doing a good job, I feel, up to this point in, at least for me, attaching me to that character. It's a character you just feel sorry for all the time. You just want to like take the little guy and give him a hug and be like, "It's all good, man.
It's all good.
Like, you're struggling, but it's going to be okay." But it's a really hard thing, especially for, like a little kid to be experiencing and going through.
Exactly. And not only a little kid, and it's not only that he's innocent of the charge, but he also has worked to fight off the other black mages.
Yeah, true.
Right? So he isn't just doing nothing and an innocent bystander. He is actively helping to defend these people, and they just don't know it. And you can't blame the Cleyrans for that either.
Right.
It's like they're just trying to protect their families. There's another thing too that Chocolate Rob actually just mentioned something very interesting. He makes a connection between Fisherman's Horizon. From
and
FF8. Cleyra, from FF8. And the idea, Rob is mentioning the idea of like worshiping pacifism or taking this isolationism into a point where it's like completely self-sustaining and preserving the 100 years ago past completely forever. And the idea that you can do that for a while, but at some point the outside world finds its way in. And then you're unprepared for it, right?
Well, this is a parallel.
Fisherman's Horizon. Yeah.
This is a parallel with Japan itself.
Oh,
I mean, Japan like very much sort of shut itself off from the rest of the world.
Killed all the foreigners. Yeah.
And it's a similar situation. It's like an isolationist mentality.
Yeah.
For whatever like maybe good reason or good intention there is that starts there. In the long term, this is not a good answer if you want your country to thrive. Well, especially in a world, in our world, the world was becoming more and more connected.
Yeah.
And there was essentially came a point where there was no way to avoid the world. I mean, it's just something that they had to accept.
It's so funny. As soon as Japan accepted that and began to participate in the world economy, turns out people freaking love Japan. People love them and their products and their language and their culture and their food. Like as soon as I think they just didn't realize how much people would like really love them.
Yeah.
Or maybe they did and they were just like, we're going to keep it for ourselves.
They just hated everybody else.
It's possible.
Everybody hated everybody else.
Everybody hated everybody else. And still kind of
in the whole world.
But it's softened from what it was.
It's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be really bad.
Yeah.
But it's still bad. Okay. So Puck, we learned that he is the son of the king of Burmecia. There's actually another interesting piece of dummied content. I'm not going to like read it or get into it right now. But when Freya separates when you arrive in Cleyra, she goes to meet with the king. We don't see what happens in that meeting.
No.
But in the dummied piece of content,
we do.
You see the meeting between the king of Burmecia and Freya. And I think it's there that you get at least some subtext that the king of Burmecia might have not necessarily completely banished her, but he apologizes to her.
Okay.
And so when I was bringing that up, I think last week or something like that.
I cut it from the episode.
I'm not sure if that is something that is in what is in the main game in terms of text. Maybe the person who brought that up in the comments I read was talking about this cut scene or something like that.
Yeah, sure. Kind of reminds me of how Zidane had to renounce the Tantalus crew in order to leave the ship and go search for his friends. But then he sees Baku later and it's like old pals, it's not like that big of a deal. But technically he had to like renounce his place in their group before he could leave. Maybe Freya had something like that where it was less of like a 100% complete banishment, but something like that had to happen because she was a Dragoon Knight and she had to renounce her duties at least if she was just going to leave an abandoned post.
And trying to go find her boyfriend.
Her BFF. It's like, okay, also you could defend us because that's what you took an oath to do, but whatever, go find your boy if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, right.
So that would necessitate some type of breaking of an oath of sorts, I suppose.
So there are a couple of scenes with Puck. The first is he basically comes to warn everybody that they're about to be attacked.
Yeah.
But the other scene that I thought was interesting with him is that he knew or found, I guess, discovered Fratley.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When Alexandria ends up attacking Cleyra, and after you kind of come to the pinnacle of that scene, Zidane and the group sort of go down the trunk to sort of fight invading forces coming from underneath. But that was all just a ruse.
Right,
where
they
the
could
black
just, like,
mages were just going to teleport into the village itself. And so they kind of drew them out as the defense force, the fighters away, and then just teleported in there. So you come back and it's all being attacked, and you help a family by telling them which direction to run to try to escape, and you can get different rewards for making sure they go the right way and that they're all safe. But when you get to the top, up near like their temple or church, this is when Fratley arrives.
Yeah, he kills all the wizards.
Fights off all the black mages and does like superhero landings and looks all cool. But Puck then reveals that he had found Fratley and that he was suffering amnesia. He had no idea who he was, no idea where he came from, no idea of any of that. And Puck had been, I guess, sort of working to help him remember who he was. But this is all devastating, of course, for Freya, who, realizes that the love of her life doesn't even remember who she is. About as devastating, probably worse even than realizing he was dead, is like he's alive, but he doesn't know me.
He doesn't know you. And the way she finds out, too, it's just really sad because nobody had explained this to her beforehand. So she just sees Sir Fratley and she slowly starts approaching him and saying, wow, I looked all over for you. It was hard, but I'm glad the journey's over. And she was like, inching closer and closer to him. And then he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, you've been gone for a while and I've been looking for you. And he's just like, what's your name again?
Yeah.
And that's where it finally hits her. Like, wait.
Yeah.
You remember me, don't you? It's your old pal Freya. And he's just like, I'm sorry, I have no memories.
One thing I really liked about it, too, was he's saying that, and she's like, how can you be saying this? It's almost like, are you pretending not to know me? And then Puck has to run in and be like, listen, this is legit amnesia. He's not just being a butthole right now. He's not just being a jerk.
Which, by the way, does echo a little bit of what Zidane was doing to her when he first finds her. He was calling her by the wrong name, remember?
Yes.
So when and this is a funny connection, but, she meets Zidane and he's just like, Elizabeth? Or, I remember now, you're Julie. And without knowing that Sir Fratley was going to basically do that same thing to her a little bit later. It almost, if Zidane was doing that on purpose, knowing this, that would have been cruel, right?
Yeah.
But instead, he was just being Zidane. But of course, the way the scene plays out, all of a sudden, it kind of seems cruel to have ever played a joke on this woman to just pretend you didn't remember her name, right? I'm sure Zidane would never do that again. Because this really, and we don't see Freya for a while.
So we have a comment here from Captain Nimrod, good name. Didn't Puck call Vivi his slave in the first act?
Indeed,
yes, he did. Was that foreshadowing Vivi's struggle with identity?
I
didn't
think
of it that way. And I don't know if it was necessarily like purposeful foreshadowing on on the writer's sort of end. But
the black mages are all essentially
look
slaves.
at it that way because essentially that gives you a choice. You can say like, yes, I'll be your slave, or no in the scene, but you can't progress the story until you say yes.
Right.
So I feel like there's a couple ways you can interpret this. If you just say, yeah, sure, I'll be your slave, let's go. You could read into Vivi this sort of blank slate and easily manipulated little kid, which is consistent with the behavior of the black mages on the cargo ship from Dali when we were leaving there, when you get attacked by the third Black Waltz.
Yeah.
Where he's trying to talk to him and they're like ignoring him and they're basically like robots. So Vivi it has developed a personality, and I think we'll get to this point today when we get to the Black Mage Village. I'm pretty sure we'll get that far.
We'll see.
But it's sort of revealed there that like over time there does eventually begin to develop individuality and different traits that make each black mage unique from each other.
Right.
But kind of in their initial creation, they come out being essentially total blank slates and just doing exactly what they're told to do.
Right.
So it is interesting in that light. We would know that at this point, Vivi has had interactions with his grandfather, Quan, for some time, and so has developed some form of an identity, but is still probably developing that. And so you're going to be my slave, and him being willing to go along with that might suggest a little bit of what you're talking about there. So I can see where you're coming from with that.
It does certainly struggle, or it does signify a struggle with identity in general, because when somebody asks you to be a slave and you willingly say yes, it means you don't know who you are. Like it almost guarantees that like you don't like have anything better to do you? You don't know anyone else around here, do you? Right? You are, like you mentioned, like a total blank slate, right? And so blank slate is almost like another way of saying that is like no identity.
Yeah.
Right? That's what blank slate means in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
And so if Vivi is, accepting slavery willingly just out of nowhere, then yeah, it's definitely signifying a huge struggle with his own identity, which he may not even be aware of. It's just the fact that he doesn't know. So maybe struggle isn't the right word, but a lack of identity maybe is the better way to put it.
Right.
And now, of course, it's turned into a more of a struggle. But at the beginning, I don't know, just lack of identity, lack of purpose.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a ignorance is bliss. And Freya touched on that concept with Kina or Quina, or however you pronounce that. In the scene we talked about on the way to Burmecia, where she runs over to the flower. And it's like, oh, the simplicity. I wish I could be more this way.
Ignorance is bliss. Yeah.
And it's almost like Vivi is moving from one end of that spectrum to the other through the game. So starting more on the side of the Kina ignorance side and moving this direction into the complexities that come with internal struggles with identity, mortality and death, and who am I, why am I here, where am I going, these sorts of fundamental human questions.
Yeah, so as Vivi's on his journey one way, Freya is wanting
to go
to
back.
make a journey the other way, and they're kind of just like passing each other in this moment. Yeah, that's very interesting. It reminds me, can't remember. I think it was from Men in Black 2, actually. Tommy Lee Jones. Somebody said, well, 'tis better to loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Yeah. And Tommy Lee Jones just says, try it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it freaking sucks to lose someone you love. Like, I don't cherish the memories knowing that they're gone forever. I don't know. There's two ways to interpret it. But, of course, for someone like Vivi, maybe that's true. For someone like Freya, like, screw you, shut up, don't tell me that. I would probably rather be dead, actually.
There is really something to that I feel is really important. And having not played through the remainder of the game, I'm not remembering, every line of dialogue or whether this is brought up in any extreme detail. I'm not remembering that at the moment. But there is something really fundamental about the experience of life, no matter who you are, which is dealing with this exact thing. Yeah. It's almost like people will posture those kinds of, what would you call them? What's the word I'm thinking of? It's a platitude.
I think you're just supposed to say... Yeah.
You'll have people who will posture these kinds of platitudes. Oh, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And you go through your first really difficult breakup or something like that. Yeah. I'm talking about, you're probably a teenager or something like that, young person. And at least for me, like that's still in terms of the intensity of that emotion was... my emotions have dulled a bit the older I get. And so I have definitely had what would be classified as more devastating losses. Okay. But at being the age I was and with the intensity of emotions, which I think comes more from hormone balance and that sort of thing, that was definitely a more intense feeling. Yeah. And how devastating that was. Yeah, that's rough. It's really, really hard. And in the moment you're feeling that, it definitely does not feel like that could possibly be
I'm
true.
So glad. Yeah. It's like the second somebody dumps you and you just turn around and you just go, well, I'm glad I loved and lost. You got this fake smile on you. Let's just walk away. No, dude, it takes time. I think it is better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all line is true, but maybe needs to be said when you're like 82 and you're looking back on your whole life and what did I even do? Was any of this worth it? I think that is a time where it's like, I'm glad that I came here. I'm glad that I lived and loved. And now, it's over now. That I think that's true. I like the statement in general, But you got to be really careful when you choose to say that to somebody. And honestly, that's probably something that people just have to realize, and that nobody's going to learn that through just being told that. Right?
Yeah.
You don't get told it's better to have loved and lost. That's something that decades later you slowly realize, I'm glad I had that experience, even though it sucked and felt awful at the time.
Yeah. And I think that the experience of life, at least for me, almost boils down to your ability. I guess the success, what indicates, or maybe one indicator, I'm throwing this out as one strong indicator of living a successful life, is how well were you able to learn to accept the losses and learn to appreciate what you had,
right,
versus allowing those incredibly painful touch points of life to swallow you, and to keep you from continuing to live this very limited life that you have, this short space of time you're here. You know, this is touched on in so many. I mean, I think it's such a universal thing that it's touched on in so many stories. I just played a part in Death Stranding 2 today, where a similar kind of sentiment is shared with the main character there. There's this idea that this pain, this emotional pain, can be so deep and so horrific that if you are not able to learn how to frame what that loss means in a way that is constructive and allows you to continue moving, to continue having experiences, to not be so afraid of loss that you just isolate forever and try to avoid it and can never let go, that you essentially prevent yourself from having, it's really hard to call it that or classify it, I'll put it in quotes for that reason, a successful life.
Right.
And so this is, I think, something that this game is really dealing with here. But in what we're going to learn is a very protracted or compacted space.
Condensed,
for Vivi. Vivi is having to learn all of these life lessons that we, if we're lucky, get to have over this
a long
80
period of time,
to 100 year span.
If you're
and, you know, he's getting all of that in a much, much quicker kind of condensed space.
We will talk about how much quicker soon. But yes, it is very different.
But I think that is one thing that the game is really exploring, and I think it's really, really well done.
And I love seeing kind of the counterbalance between Freya and Vivi and just where their journeys are leading them, and how each character kind of has it's not a foil completely, but just another character that maybe is experiencing a similar thing, but in the opposite way.
Yeah.
And I think that shows a story with well-written characters.
Yeah.
Where you can say that.
For sure. So,
Vivi also, by the way, this is very important. Vivi says that Puck is the best friend he's ever had. His slave master is the best friend he ever had. The guy who almost got him killed several times and really didn't care about him at all in the end and just ran away and said, "See you, sucker." Right?
Yeah.
That's the best friend Vivi's ever had. That line kind of, I don't know, that tells you a lot about Vivi. He is a good kid. He's got a good heart. He sees only the good in people, even when they blatantly show him how awful they can be. He's just like, yeah, but they are, they're still good in some ways, right? And I think this was back when Puck was being held hostage by that like mud monster thing. Or whatever. We had to go kind of save him at first, and Vivi was first in line to run out and save his best friend Puck. I freaking love it, dude. Oh man, I love it.
The line was actually that Puck was Vivi's first friend, so I misread it by saying best friend. However, referring to him as a friend at all is not accurate in my opinion when you look at how Puck was treating Vivi and almost got him killed several times.
So they were able to successfully defend the Desert Star. And they have this ceremony that they perform. It's a dance, kind of a river really dance.
Cool. And it's clearly one that goes way back because Freya knows this dance, right? And the Burmesians have been separated for at least 100 years. So this is a many hundreds of years old, I think, tradition, right? This dance that both cultures still learn and practice.
Yeah.
And Freya's like, all right, I will participate in it. And it looks very Irish.
Yes.
It's a very like Irish dance kind of thing. Hands at the side.
Well,
and then just kicking the
loves
legs.
his Celtic influence for his music. So
yeah, the song was wonderful.
Definitely some of that in there.
Yeah.
But as they're playing it, and this dance, this ceremony is sort of required for the powering and continuing of the storm.
Yeah.
So it's being played on the harp
So it's a
while
religious dance.
the dancers dance. But as the ceremony's going on, the harp strings break.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny because at first I thought I read it wrong. Strings? All of them? You're just playing the harp. But as you kind of realize what's happening, this harp, the music of this harp, it's not just a normal harp.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing guitar, typically one string breaks at a time. You're really doing something wrong if you broke all of them at once, right? But on the harp, which has even more strings, that's pretty wild. But the signifier here is that the power of this harp is being sustained and amplified through this jewel.
Yes.
And the power of the jewel has been compromised, which means this harp, which may even be a 100-year-old harp too, who knows? All of a sudden it just goes back to being a normal harp instead of meaning, or what would you call it, this powerful kind of like spiritual thing that's been around forever. As soon as the stone is gone, it's like, all right, these strings should have broken a long time ago. They're all breaking now because the thing that was keeping that from happening is no longer functioning. And at that same moment, the dust storm completely stops.
Dissipates.
Yeah.
And this is essentially what allows the attack to happen.
Yeah.
And but Beatrix infiltrates, takes the jewel and runs with it. You chase after her, have another battle that you can't win.
Yeah.
And she kind of calls off the attack when she has the jewel, and you see all of the black mages essentially using their teleport spell.
Yeah, they create
which creates like a little bubble ball thing, sphere that they jump into and then get teleported up to the airship. Yeah. And so Zidane and the group, they kind of, except Kina, she doesn't go.
Kina's like, I'm afraid of heights. I'll walk home.
Yeah, just goes home at that point. Goes home at that point.
You find her later at Q's March chasing frogs once again.
Yeah. So, but
living that blissful life.
And Freya and Zidane all jump into one of those
kind of hitch a ride
portals and go up there.
Which is lucky.
Yeah.
Because, well, I guess Kina escaped, so whatever.
Yeah.
But, Braun shows up, and she's got a weapon of mass destruction.
The Eidolon that they've extracted from Garnet. This was ritual.
Is this Odin? Or?
This is Odin, yes.
This was Odin, yeah.
So, this is a really intense scene.
Yeah.
Because Braun summons the Eidolon. It just comes like from the sky, riding the horse, straight down towards Cleyra,
right. Oh,
and just throws like the spear like down through the trunk and just blows it to bits. It completely obliterates the whole tree.
Japan is really good when it comes to showing things that are metaphorically similar to an atomic bomb explosion.
Yeah.
The Japanese are quite good at depicting that in ways that really kind of trouble your heart, right? Where it's just like, whoa, that's crazy. They've done it many times. I remember Star Ocean has a scene. It's mostly a tsunami, but still, just like, holy cow. Like, they're really good at showing, the devastation on that end. And I wonder why the summons aren't anywhere near that powerful when we use them. That's my complaint. They look just as powerful. They're, you're smashing the moon and breaking things, but it really only does, 2,000 damage. And it's like, okay, I was really hoping.
This is, again, the abstraction of the battles.
We
made a whole video.
It's like, Odin, do the thing that you did before. No, my power's weak for you.
We did a whole video back on our Dark Pixel channel that was essentially a spoof on this entire concept, which is
destroy the moon.
Summons of Final Fantasy look so devastatingly powerful, and then it's just like you beat up a guy and they walk away from it alive. But it's just all part of the abstraction of RPG combat. But
for some reason, when Queen Braun uses it, who has never done this before, it's a nuclear bomb.
There's another thing that I think I said erroneously in the last episode that was put out. I think I had said something like they had kept this knowledge about Garnet's summoning powers from her. They had sort of hidden it from her.
Is that not accurate?
Well, she says later that she was always afraid of her powers as a summoner.
Interesting. Okay,
So
sure.
it's
Okay.
not that they hid it from her entirely. She obviously knew she had these eidolons and could summon them, but that she was afraid of that power and didn't want to. So she certainly didn't receive much in the way of training. But what was hidden from her was that she had to turn 16 before this ritual could be performed to extract the eidolons.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was the entire sort of facade that Bronn was putting up. You know, I mean, even in the scene where Garnet confronts Bronn directly, she's acting very motherly, like, "Oh dear, oh sweetheart, that can't, oh, you're just so mistaken. That's not what's going on." And as soon as Kuja puts her to sleep, Bronn drops that persona. Like, oh, this meddlesome brat, like, changes entirely.
Right.
So for however long Bronn has been planning this or has been, concocting these, schemes.
Right.
She has been putting up a front to Garnet, but Garnet has only recently seemed to notice a difference.
Right.
Now, some of this definitely coincides with the arrival of Kuja.
Yeah, 1 year prior.
So who knows how long technically it's been, but I think it's been just since Kuja has began to influence her. So Bronn was waiting for her to turn 16 so that she could perform this ritual and extract the eidolons to be used in war like this. So now that Bronn essentially has the power to drop a nuke whenever she wants, it really changes the dynamic of any resistance other kingdoms may or may not give at this point, which we find out pretty quickly here.
Very quickly.
Because they learn there on the ship that Bronn is planning on executing the princess now.
Yeah, once she gets the eidolon, she's going to kill her daughter.
Yeah.
And Beatrix over here.
Yeah, this surprises her, So she was already there's a few reasons why she questions the queen at this point. We're starting to see Beatrix, a little bit of her internal thoughts about what she's being commanded to do and how she feels about it.
Yeah.
I took note of at least this, that the first reason that she seems to take umbrage with Bronn is that she's using black mages and summons to wage these wars rather than just relying on her and her knights.
Yes.
That was her first gripe.
Yes, it was.
Why are you pushing us into the background? We're more than sufficient to have accomplished these goals.
Yeah.
Why are you regulating me or I guess disrespecting me by making me take a back seat to these black mages and summons? I hate this.
Yeah.
And then it's, she's planning on executing the princess. Why? Because that's when she goes, because she makes that complaint first when they arrive on the ship. Mm-hmm. Then she goes and talks to Bronn and starts to realize, this is a lot crazier than I realized.
Yeah.
She's going to just execute her after getting the eidolon. She doesn't even care about her own daughter anymore.
Right.
So I found it interesting that primarily her problem with this war was that she was being put on the bench, so to speak, not that they're just killing them for no reason and taking their jewels.
And the weirdest part about it is that she kind of flips sides just a little bit later, right? Yeah. And that was her biggest issue. The Japanese may interest you in this
I am very
case.
interested in this, yes.
In the Japanese script, she is less upset that she took a back seat, and instead, when she says, there's a line that says, "Did we train just for this?" is kind of what she says in the Japanese, but it's referring to, did we train so that she could use these black mages and eidolons and massacre these people in a horrible way, right? The Japanese is way softer on Beatrix. She's way less arrogant. It does reference, our people would have been enough, but she also says, did we really train for this? Meaning did we just take part in this horrific atrocity? All of this training we have, and this is what happens. I'm horrified.
Yeah.
That's Beatrix in Japanese. In English, she's like, we would have nuked the town just fine with our girl military people. And it's like, no, in the Japanese, she's like, don't nuke the town. Like, that's what she's saying in Japanese. In English, it sounds like she's like, we have nukes too. so it's very different. It gives a very different read, and one that's a lot more sympathetic to what Beatrix becomes very soon here, which is, a treason, a traitor to Queen Braun.
Right.
So, and it all starts here. So the English really doesn't do her any favors here.
Yeah, I had heard that, and so I think that is, I don't know if I want to call it necessarily a mistake, but just an oversight, maybe, of not realizing how it reads in English. Maybe the intention was to make it how it's supposed to be.
Well,
but like, it's just in writing the lines, it didn't quite come off that way.
She does say, did me and my soldiers train just for this, right?
Yeah.
And you can interpret that multiple ways, but in the Japanese, it's very explicit. I can't believe she just nuked this town. Like, and that is completely left out of the English, right?
Yeah.
But the line that would have come on the heels of this, let's say if there was a Beatrix translator, you're translating all Beatrix's lines. The lines prior to this were, "Oh, I'm so powerful, no one can stand against me. I'm super sword fighty, and no one can hurt me."
Yeah.
And then it's like, then the next line is, "Did we train all this time just for this?" And it almost feels kind of natural in the English to keep that arrogant, maybe facade that Beatrix has when she is killing all the Burmesians, and just be like, well, that's Beatrix, so we're just going to keep her being like that here. Whereas in the Japanese, you're slowly seeing a change, but in the English, it's kind of, and then the change happens all at once.
Yeah.
And I sort of understand that a translator would have taken Beatrix's previous lines of "no one's strong enough to face me," that's all she cares about, right? And then just keep that. Keep that persona in these next lines as well. I get where it came from. It just, in my opinion, was probably the wrong choice.
Yeah. In any case, Beatrix then uses these little pods to teleport back to Alexandria, and Vivi sees that and then gives the idea, like, we got to go rescue the princess. Let's go down there and warp down and see if we can rescue her before they execute.
So if the pods work warping up, then they work warping back.
Yeah.
The English is weird because Beatrix references Steiner after she talks to Queen Braun, and Braun is just like, "No second guessing me, just do it." And Beatrix leaves, and she goes, "Man, this is getting really out of hand. Maybe Steiner was right," is what Beatrix says in the English. Mm-hmm. That came out of nowhere. And last time she saw Steiner, he was like the most loyal person in the whole place.
Blindly loyal.
She hasn't seen him since he left, but the Japanese is different. In the Japanese, she doesn't say maybe Steiner was right. She says, maybe I should have left like Steiner. She may be interpreting Steiner's absence as
that's true,
a deserting, or like he got out of, he saw Queen Braun going crazy and he got out of here.
That makes sense.
Maybe I should do the same.
Again, I feel like that's not necessarily a mistake or a misunderstanding on the translator's part, as much as they think what they wrote is communicating that.
Yes.
And for some people, or maybe even for the majority of people, it's not.
Right.
It's maybe a little too subtle without a performance of a voice actor to word it or say it with certain emphasis that would change how you interpret that line if it's just a written line of text.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's exactly what I think is happening. When she says, I think Steiner, or maybe Steiner was right, maybe Steiner was right for abandoning Alexandria, is what she's thinking.
Exactly.
Not that they had some conversation in the past in which he expressed
because he never would
doubt about that. Yeah, that didn't happen.
No, that certainly didn't happen.
And that makes sense because as soon as Steiner came back with the princess to Alexandria, he's captured alongside her. Yeah. So there is at least some idea there among the Alexandrians that he betrayed the queen.
Exactly.
He left and deserted.
Yep.
When really he was just trying to bring her back the whole time. So I think that's true. I think that's the way you're meant to read that line.
And also, Chocolate Rob brought up a really good point. He says that the reason why Odin is so much more powerful for Queen Braun than for the other summoners that are, in our group, on our team within the game, is apparently, and Chocolate Rob points out that it's because of the army of black mages lending power to Braun in order to make the summon happen.
Oh,
so
okay.
There may be an explanation for this.
Is there some mechanic? I mean, that would be very interesting if they had built that in the battle system. I don't think they did, but like Vivi giving, say, elemental magic to Steiner when he does his attacks, if his presence somehow like empowered the summons too, that would be really interesting. And that's not how the game mechanics work.
So.
But
it's an interesting.
I hadn't considered whether or not the black mages and the manufacturing of black mages contributed to the amplification of the power of the Eidolons. It's an interesting thought. He goes on to say, Rob, I should say, is going on here to say, alternatively, the Japanese line is questioning why they trained for this only to be supplanted by other forces. Was our training a waste of time as opposed to, is this what our training is making us do?
Yeah, we trained for this genocide.
He wrote up here, as you were explaining that, but I wanted to slaughter them myself.
See,
that's not
makes it seem
what
that
she's
way.
saying, but that's what the English feels like she's saying.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring that up that was what I mentally took a note of as her first gripe. Right. But I wanted to kill everyone. But that's not what she's doing.
Petulant child.
She's just expressing frustration that this is what apparently it seems we were trained to do.
Right. You were trained for war so that this could happen.
And that's what she's taking, that's what she has a problem with. So I'm glad that we went over that. The Japanese, it's clearer there. Oh. So Rob is bringing up a cutscene that comes a little later. We haven't gotten to this part yet. That basically gives more evidence to what he's saying here. So we'll readdress this when that cutscene comes up at the end of Disc 2.
Yeah, that's not for
what we're playing up to for next week. So, okay.
Dope.
Now, we return to Alexandria, and I love this little section mission, whatever you want to call it. It's a timed mission. You have 30 minutes to get down and try to rescue her before Braun's ship is going to arrive back in Alexandria. Yeah,
because we were able to teleport there before the ship got there.
Yes. So, you are fighting or avoiding enemies as you're making your way down. This was something I took a note on. And it's not even really that relevant, but I just, something I thought about. In this section, there are no random encounters. It's just the Alexandrian soldiers running around, and you can try to run around them and avoid fights to try to get down there sooner.
Very interesting.
So I kind of thought that was cool. And it made me, I guess I just had remakes on the mind at the moment because there's this rumored Final Fantasy IX remake.
Yeah.
And whether or not, if they were to do, let's say, a turn-based battle system and try to keep it more faithful, whether they would do random encounters or whether they would do...
You could see them.
You could see the encounters and avoid them.
Kind of like Tales of...
This is more what the modern JRPG does. It's kind of rare that you see random encounters.
Yeah, completely random.
Anymore. It's been replaced in favor of seeing enemies on the map and trying to either run towards them and engage them or run around them, which I prefer. But it was just making me think like they definitely had the ability to have done this in this game because of this section right here. I mean, obviously they could have done that, but they chose not to. Random encounters was a purposeful choice made by the developers, not necessarily some sort of limitation or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, total side tangent. But there's still random encounters in Octopath Traveler. I'm talking more about like 3D, sort of like
Expedition 33.
Like 3D traversal, less so than the. I guess it's technically 3D, but I think you know what I mean when I say that. I'm not going to keep going on the side tangent. Anyways, you get down there, you rescue her. I love Steiner's like just wailing, thinking she's dead, and just like, I'm not worthy to live.
And this is like the fourth time that he's had to deal with this, where he thinks Garnet is just gone, and he can't believe it, right? The one time he thought he left on the airship, or, Yeah, it's funny. Or he thought she got poisoned, and he just like, he cannot live with himself each time it happens. It's so funny.
Yeah. Another thing I really liked here is that Steiner and Zidane start to kind of come to an understanding because Zidane is obviously distraught, can't, he picks her up and lifts her and carries her out and is obviously super worried about her.
Yeah.
And they get up to that room where kind of the sofa was there. This is where Garnet had confronted her mother and Kuja put her to sleep.
Yeah.
There's like a trapdoor behind the fireplace that leads down into a dungeon. So he sets her down. She needs to rest for a minute. And Steiner and Zidane have a little bit of a back and forth here where Steiner goes, go ahead and blame it on me and my incompetence and all this stuff. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, and there's just this moment of understanding between the two. Okay, he's not this criminal who's looking to take advantage of the princess like I thought. And Steiner, as annoying as I think he is, like, obviously the only thing he cares about is protecting her. We're both feeling horrible and guilty for not having done that. The one thing we all wanted to do. And this is a moment where Steiner essentially entrusts the princess to Zidane to protect.
Yeah, this was fascinating. In the Japanese, Steiner calls Zidane Dono, basically. The same thing that he uses for Vivi.
Honorific.
A different, instead of just San or whatever he said before, or just not having one because he doesn't like him. He would instead, he called him Zidane Dono, which means it's basically when he says Master Vivi, when Steiner refers to Master Vivi, they put the word master in front of there to signify that Steiner is being deferential and respectful. He gives Zidane that deferential and respectful, what's the word? That's like a suffix or however you put it.
Honorific.
Title, basically. And that's the first time he has ever and would ever do this for Zidane, right? Yeah. It's like, holy cow, that's a big deal. But that doesn't carry over into the English as well, even though you can tell that's a hard thing to translate. So I don't blame them for not doing that. But then also Zidane likewise reciprocates. Zidane says something like, it would be better if we were all a little bit more like you, Steiner, basically, that way as well. Because Steiner's like, oh, I'm awful, and, let's do this. Okay, you can take the princess and go. I trust you now. And Zidane is just like, no, like, I'm only doing, like, you inspire me to be more like you, actually, in this moment, and that kind of stuff. It's reciprocal in the Japanese. It's very nice. But even in the English, it comes across very well. Yeah. You can tell that they're finally getting over their petty squabbles. And like, this is something serious and important. Let's just freaking work together. We want the same thing anyways. Let's just work together for it.
Yeah, because Steiner here is struggling with just his honor as a knight. He has allowed all of these terrible things to happen in his mind. He has allowed this all to go down. And I can see now that you're not the person I accuse you of being. I can see now your affection for the princess, true, genuine love for her. And I will trust you with her because I couldn't protect her. And I have my comrades back here so Beatrix enters the scene at this moment, sees that the princess was hurt, and realizes, okay, Braun has totally lost it. I can't continue doing this anymore. Yeah. And when Braun shows up and Zorn and Thorn are there, this is where Beatrix takes her stand and says, take the princess and get out.
Yeah.
So our group, minus, this was an interesting moment too, Freya. Freya stays to fight with Beatrix despite hating her for having just attacked her hometown, essentially.
Right.
But is, I guess, calm, open-minded enough to see, like, I can't forgive you for what you did.
Yeah.
But you can still protect the princess, and I will at least join forces with you to fight Braun, who seems to be like the actual source behind this aggressive move.
Yeah.
So really nice sort of selfless moment there for Freya to fight alongside Beatrix against the real culprit behind this. But while the two of them are fighting, this is where our group goes down, and then as they're descending the stairs, Steiner turns around
and he says, I can't go back.
I can't keep going with you. Yeah. My honor dictates I have to go back and help.
Right.
So he turns around and goes back.
As soon as he leaves, then a massive, like, dog basically jumps over him, I guess, and just like boom, and
I think the name of the monster is a Bandersnatch.
Bandersnatch, which is a reference to Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, exactly.
Lewis Carroll. Also, by the way, Steiner is a knight of Pluto. Pluto is the Latin form of the Greek god Hades.
Yes.
He is a knight of Hades. And if that didn't make sense at the beginning of the game, it should make more sense now. Like he is a knight of hell, and he is renouncing that basically. Like I'm done serving Hades,
yes.
Pluto, and I'm going to do my own thing. Also, there's the idea of like a plutocracy is like an aristocracy. It's like the plutocrats are the high noble people,
Right.
And like I mentioned before, the word Adelstone means a jewel. Well, as the word stone is Stein, so his name is Adelstein, basically.
Yes.
So he is a jewel, but maybe more of like a diamond in the rough, something that needs to be worked on a little bit in order to to show that it shines with value.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I like it a lot. But yeah, he leaves, and then we got to fight these freaking Bandersnatches, of which I thought there were one. There are several.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot.
And you kind of see that Beatrix and Freya are retreating. By the way, Beatrix in the English says, "Forgive me, Freya." In the Japanese, and by the way, it's the fourth time I'm shouting out Vagrant Chocobo. Watch the whole series. It's wonderful stuff. But Vagrant Chocobo points out that in this moment, Beatrix actually doesn't say forgive me. What she says is, what I did is unforgivable. So it's kind of the opposite of what she said. It's a similar sentiment, but the way Beatrix says it is, I don't ask for your forgiveness because what I've done is unforgivable.
Yeah.
But let's fight together to protect what we want to protect now, right? And in the English, she just says, forgive me. Anyways, it's
not
and
quite
Freya's
the
like,
same.
okay,
Yeah.
no, not really, because Freya actually also says, I'm not ready to forgive you at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's deal with the issue at hand. And then in the Japanese, Beatrix says, I don't ask your forgiveness.
Yeah.
So Beatrix knows that she done screwed up, but, well, this is kind of funny. She is partially blind, right?
That's true.
I wonder if maybe there's some symbolism there. Her one good eye can see really well, but she has a blind spot. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
And her blind spot is the same one as Steiner's, despite having both eyes. Steiner was unable to see it. But to their credit, they both kind of turned around when, well, maybe after.
A little too late.
Too late. It's too late. But better than not.
Better late than never.
Yeah. There you go.
For sure. So, the way that Zidane, Garnet, and Vivi escape here is on the Gargant.
Yeah,
they
that's
go
right.
back down the same way and hop onto the same.
Yeah, but there's a
Gargant
problem
and
this time,
leave
right?
From there.
It starts going crazy. It starts running wild. I think it's being chased by the snake.
It's being chased by a different snake. This one's a more like powerful one.
That keeps happening, by the way. Well, we level up, and so the enemies we fight have to be stronger.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it chases you all the way to the end, and then basically the Gargant just like breaks through the side of the mountain.
Yeah, so they wanted it to stop at Trino.
Yeah, so they get off.
But it's running away for its life, and it goes
apparently
further,
this thing goes really fast.
and eventually reaches essentially the Pinnacle Rocks, which is the next section. I had a feeling that you might have taken a lot of notes during the Pinnacle Rocks section.
I took some, but okay. The last thing is that Marcus and Blank
Marcus went and saved
show
Blank.
up, because Marcus saves Blank, and then they show up just in the nick of time to kind of free us so that we can leave, because we fell for the oldest trick in the book, which is walk up to a gate and another one goes up behind us, and Zorn and Thorn think it's so funny, and then afterwards they're like, they fell for it again, because as we're leaving, the same thing happens again. It's not like there was anywhere else for us to go. But then Blank and Marcus show up and knock out Zorn and Thorn, and then open the gate for us, but keep the other gate shut so the Bandersnatches, the infinity of Bandersnatches can't come through, and then we get to get out on the Gargant. That part was pretty fun. I also have to mention really quick before we move on, everyone in the party is just breaking now. Like everyone has reached a breaking point. You got Freya, Vivi, Steiner, Garnet, even Beatrix. They're all realizing that some foundational pieces of their entire lives are completely faulty and are breaking. It's who they are, it's who they've been for years, and now they're realizing that they built a house on sand. They are removed from reality and need to change. Zidane is breaking too, but it's harder to pinpoint exactly why he's breaking. I remember he mentions before, like, I can't even cry. Like, he doesn't even know how to react to Garnet dying. Something in him is breaking too, but it's less evident exactly why and what. Even he doesn't quite know. But all the other characters, these are all severely broken people now, especially after this moment. It's like this was the final thing that just broke everybody. And now people are going to rebuild their lives in a new way. And we'll see which way everyone decides to go.
Yep.
Zidane is kind of saying after all of this, kind of this craziness happens, he says, sometimes you can't think things out. You have to listen to your heart. And this is Zidane talking. And also, right at the very end, this is fascinating. Queen Braun hires some bounty hunters to go after Dagger, basically, to get her back. Doesn't seem that concerned about Zidane, but is very concerned about Vivi. So Queen Braun says she wants Vivi killed and Garnet to be brought back, or the amulet.
Oh, right.
The amulet to be brought back.
The amulet to be brought back.
Doesn't care much about Garnet herself, but the amulet, and then kill Vivi. She says that he'll become a problem later on, right?
She hires some bounty hunters.
Yeah, Lonnie and
a guy we don't know the name.
Sorry, unknown name.
I can't remember what it says. It's like Mysterious Man.
Yeah, Mysterious Man.
Something like that.
And then Lonnie. And she's the one she has the dog or anyway, she's got some type of animal, this crazy monster thing that travels with her. But we meet them very soon, actually. But yeah, so that's kind of how this goes. We crash into, what did you call it again?
It's called Pinnacle Rocks. This is the area next. And essentially, you wake up and are approached pretty much right away by Rama.
Yep.
Who is a classic Final Fantasy summon, the lightning summon. Usually one of the first summons you get in Final Fantasy games. Mm-hmm. And typically he's depicted as an old, wise man. So he's kind of put into that role of a bit of a mentor here for Garnet, given that she is a summoner and doesn't really understand much about where her powers come from. This is the Eidolon who comes to put her through a little bit of a trial or a test.
Yeah.
And this is a tradition in Final Fantasy going all the way back to, I want to say, Final Fantasy III. Which is the first one that allowed you to have summons, though Bahamut was in the first game.
Yes, but less as a summon.
But even in that game, it was true that Bahamut essentially sends you on a quest to prove your worthiness, more or less. So it's a Final Fantasy tradition that the summons want you to prove your mettle, your strength, your will, and your righteousness before they will agree to help you. So,
and this test is interesting because he wants you to get 5 fragments of a story and put them together. And if you can put them together correctly, he says, then he'll join you, right? But you go around and you find the 5 story fragments, and it's basically him telling you. You just got to go find him in different places. And then he says, all right, you've gotten all 5 pieces of the story. Now put them together, but beware, one of them does not belong, right? Mm. So then we put the 4 elements of the story together. And the reason this is interesting, given what you've said, is that this is maybe less of a challenge and more of a way for him to kind of get to know what's happening. It seems like he would join you either way.
Yes.
And there's really no way to fail this challenge.
Yes.
Well, you can really jumble it up, I guess. But the first one is called Beginning.
Yeah,
and it's just
that
beginning.
One's easy enough.
Yeah, and then there's only 3 more after that. And of course, the last one's kind of reference when the person dies. Like it's not difficult to do at all. But it becomes very interesting with the very last 2 because you essentially get to determine the ending of the story. And one of them is called the hero and the other one's called the human, right? And with the heroic ending, you get to preserve this individual's legacy and those around him and things turn out well, right? But with the human ending, you kind of are exposing a little bit of the fault of the people who are kind of, I don't know, maybe the people who are retelling the story or because they chose not to tell the daughter what had happened, right? And it's like there's a part of me that personally would say the heroic ending is the right one to choose because that is, well, it's culturally significant, it's valuable, the stories kind of build up over time. This is a natural thing that happens. This is maybe something that I would posit in against Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, right?
Yeah.
Where I would say it's okay to have like a hero that does heroic things, and especially as a guide for the culture, as these people are, trying to decide, make decisions, and an ideal that they can look forward to and follow. But there's an aspect of that is maybe less true to the actual events. And then when you portray the hero as maybe more of a human instead of just purely heroic, but kind of show the faults and show maybe some of the ways that this wasn't perfect and all that stuff, you destroy the possibility of it being an ideal that people can follow, I suppose, unless everyone's going to be very sophisticated and high IQ and can say, okay, but that's not how societies are or work, right? Generally speaking, when you focus on maybe the more human elements over the heroic elements, then you kind of destroy, I don't know how to put it, because this can't be done consciously. Like typically stories about heroes evolve over time. And this kind of, it's not one person deciding, rubbing their hands together, like, let's leave this part out and lie. It's more like the stories are told and those parts are really just forgotten. Or people just stop talking about the parts that they don't want to talk about. Like I can think about some stuff of like our founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson. Oh yeah. Right? It's like people knew all of this stuff about him. They just stopped when they talked about him. They just didn't say those parts. And then after the Civil War, there were other parts. They said, let's not talk about that part either anymore. And before you know it, you have a version of Thomas Jefferson that's very different from the actual Thomas Jefferson, but that provides a very good guide for the liberal democracy, group of people that we have, right? The society, the culture. And then the trouble with that is that later on, those things that were forgotten resurface in ways that kind of end up destroying the heroicness of the hero, anyways, right? And this is true of like, I said Thomas Jefferson. I probably should have said George Washington. But for some reason, my mind went to Thomas Jefferson. The story of him cutting down the cherry tree.
It's true that it's probably true of most of those guys.
Basically all of them. And so there is a benefit towards emphasizing the humanness of them. That way, when these things crop up later on, they're not like gods you're not revered.
Then
right?
just shellacked like, no, my childhood was a lie.
And but at the same time, you also lose a lot of the power that these things can have as ideals in society that people point to or look up towards or ascend or try to be like. And so more or less what I'm saying is that there's validity both ways. And even Rama kind of realizes that. I think Vivi says, no matter which one you chose, I think he would have like gone with us anyways.
Yes.
Like it didn't really make a difference. Because Zidane was like, what was the point of that? But they're both valid. But I personally would tend towards the heroic ending because that's how you tell the story, at least in a mythological way. And that's the way that I like to think about stories like this. But in the game, I actually ended up picking the human ending because I know what this game wants to say. I know where this game's going, and I kind of don't want to hinder that message. The game wants you to pick the human ending to that story, and Rama secretly, I think, wants you to... I don't know because I didn't do it the other way, but I think Rama secretly wants to see somebody who understands the human element of things and doesn't just have an idealized, fairy tale understanding of what it takes to be a hero if you're going to become one. Because if you're, if the hero is somebody who is just perfect and didn't make mistakes, then knowing your own life, like Zidane is 16, and already up to this point, there's like several big mistakes that he's made up to this point that he probably wishes didn't happen, and that in his mind could preclude him from considering himself as being potentially a hero at some point in the future, right? So it's like, oh, I could never be that way, but maybe somebody else could do that. But by emphasizing the human element, it's like, oh, well, maybe I could be like that, right? Maybe despite my mistakes, I can still be heroic. So anyways, there's kind of multiple aspects to it, but I ended up going with the human one.
You have not played Final Fantasy II yet.
Not yet.
But you're going to very soon.
Dude, I've got the scripts. I've been reading. I've been going through stuff. I've been prepping to play that game in Japanese.
So this story is a reference to one of the missions of Final Fantasy II.
Oh, interesting.
Directly. So I'm going to read through this real quick. I won't talk about in context, but something to look for as you're playing it.
Great.
So the story goes like this. Beginning, once upon a time, 33 small countries fought together against an empire. One day, a rebel troop visited a man named Joseph, who lived with his daughter. Owing a debt to the troop, he gladly accepted their plea for help. They headed for a cavern in the snowfield. The next part is cooperation. With Joseph's help, the troop defeated the Adamantois in the snowfield cavern and acquired the goddess bell they needed to enter the empire's castle. Part 3 is silence. On their way home, they fell into a trap set by a traitor. Joseph gave his life to save the troop. The troop left without telling Joseph's daughter, Nellie, about the tragedy. Now, you have your human or hero ending to this that you pick. The hero ending is historians' explanation. Although Joseph's death was not reported to his daughter, the manner of his death speaks for itself. This is the story of a true hero. The human ending is the fact that they didn't report Joseph's death to his daughter was indicative of their guilt for failing to protect him. In the end, heroes are also human.
Right.
So in the one ending, the death is looked at as this heroic act by Joseph. In the human part, it's more like the heroes who decided not to tell the daughter, even they are human beings and they feel guilty.
Right.
So it was wrong to not disclose this, to tell the daughter, but their guilt was too strong and it got the best of them.
Sure.
So yeah, this story is a direct reference to Final Fantasy II.
Interesting. Very cool.
And Rob put a funny line here. This is a test about how well you know Final Fantasy II.
Well, I failed it, but Mike got it. Great One has something interesting here in the Discord. He says, hero equals lie, human is the hard truth. And it's true. What he's saying here is true because you're one person sifting out and consciously making that decision. But my point, what I'm trying to say is that the way that a person becomes a hero is typically through stories being told, oral tradition, over lots of time. So when it's one person just deciding what to do and omit and leave and embellish, that can easily be categorized in the lie area. Yes. I understand that. But the way that myths tend to develop and that heroes tend to develop is that over time, especially with oral traditions, especially telling or passing on these stories to younger children, that is less of a lie, in my opinion. Like, let's say you have 1 minute to explain who George Washington was. Do you even mention that he owned slaves? Like, it depends on what you're going for, maybe. Yeah. But for the most part, it's like, hey, of the very important things that he did, that is, okay, maybe like the 30-minute version, you bring in some of that stuff. Or like, at some point, you've got to say, is that the most important thing about him? Or is there something else he did that is way more important than whatever that was, right? Yeah, in context. It depends on who you are and what story you're trying to tell. But you can, is it a lie to, in a 1 minute telling to a child, to omit that fact? Are you lying? Anyways, I'm just saying, and then over time, if you even knew that, yeah. And then over hundreds of years, as these things just kind of get forgotten and as all the chips kind of get reshuffled, at what point, can you consciously say that that's a lie?
Let me add this point to sort of supplement what you're saying too. That's not a point that was worthy of telling in the story 200 and whatever it is, 50 years ago, 40, or yes, in that range. At that time, the people didn't think that fact was even something like out of the ordinary.
Right.
It wasn't weird to them.
Yes.
It's not that interesting.
It's just like, oh yeah, he lived the normal life of a Virginian, of a wealthy Virginian. Like, what's the big deal?
So it's not an overt lie or a malicious lie in that sense. The context of how we view that fact changed over time.
Yes, as our culture
now
changed.
It appears like, oh wow, why didn't my mother tell me that fact?
Right.
Was she trying to hide this from me? Well, my mother probably wasn't told that fact in school.
Right.
And my mother would have been in school right after the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
Or I guess she was probably in elementary right after that.
Yeah.
So my grandfather probably would have known that, but wouldn't have thought about it the same way.
Right.
And his father would have definitely not thought about it the same way. And you go back and it's like, it's not this, like you're saying, one touch point, one specific person, the scribe of the story who goes, let's just leave that part out.
Let's cross that out.
It's like, it's not a fact worth mentioning
Right, yeah.
in the story because it's not out of the ordinary in our world at the time. And I didn't even think about that.
And as cultures change, then we reinterpret the past as a lie. And it's like, I just think that's a mistake. I think that's a mistake. But anyways, I know that's not exactly what Great One was saying.
So I also want to touch on this because it might appear as if we are trying to say, people just didn't know slavery was wrong during this time.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate.
That's
the
not
Puritans,
what we're saying either.
The Puritans and the Quakers were, we give them a lot of crap for, but like they were the spearhead in terms of ending that.
Yes. So it says not true. Inherently, they knew it was wrong, but lied to themselves that it was right. I don't know if that's necessarily true either.
Yeah,
I do think that there were some people who legitimately believed enough to fight a war about it in their ideology that it was not wrong.
Right.
That being said, it doesn't excuse it. I'm not saying they weren't wrong. They were. My point is that there is not this malicious intent always or necessarily in the excluding of a fact like that as the story is told through a culture.
Right. And it's not just because you mentioned the lineage of you to your mother to her father to going back. That's one lineage. There was 50 million of those lineages happening over the past 200 years, like you're not hearing it the exact same way as your neighbor. But then when the kids get together and talk about it, then a new meshing of the stories comes together and, this is what kind of matches between the two. You end up getting this very generalized picture, right, between what all 50 million people have been told by their parents, who were told by their parents, who were told by their parents. It's a lot more of a communal kind of thing that just happens.
Yes.
Like there's an emergent property. The heroes emerge from a culture and aren't just dictated above by one person writing a story.
So, to put more nuance on this, it is not to say all of the people of that time were in some sort of agreement that slavery is not wrong. And that was the reason that they didn't feel bad for omitting it from the story.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are certain people who felt that way. And within the cultural zeitgeist, even those who opposed it still didn't view slavery as the same evil which we do today.
Right.
The intensity or the degree to which that sin affects us as we think about it is not the same degree to which even those in opposition to it necessarily thought about it in that time.
I think that's probably true.
When it is a normalized piece of the society, it therefore cannot have the same meaning.
Right.
Because it's a normal part, and you're like, this is wrong, we need to change this, let's fight and make this change in our society.
And that sentiment takes time too, and it's spread over 50 million people and stories told.
If it is a normalized part of your life, it therefore can't be the horrific condemning sin that we have over time come to as a culture accept that to be. It is this unthinkable thing. If we were to see this happening in front of our eyes, it would just be the most enormously horrific thing ever. How can this happen? It's a different context.
Right.
So this has happened in my lifetime. There are things being talked about right now that were normalized when I was a young child. Words we would use and ways of thinking about certain minorities and jokes that might be told that were acceptable, that today I go, wow, that was messed up.
Right.
And that's not because I was lying to myself as a younger person and knew it was wrong all along. It's I realized over time through experience, through getting to know people who are affected in that minority, that's not okay. And that took experience. But in the culture I grew up in as a child, it was normalized. And so when I came across that exact same thing between the age of 12 and the age of 37, it was a totally different thing to me. This is what Kaysen is alluding to. This change takes time.
And
it
you
takes
can see
decades to happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we can look back and talk about an aversion from a story like that and go, this person knew, as I do today, in the context
what is relevant,
that I know today, how wrong that was, and then purposefully lied about it.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the nuance that you're kind of like getting at there.
I think so. Very nice.
And going back to Dagger's context, it was more meaningful to seek the truth rather than tell the lie.
Well, in your playthrough, it depends on what you chose, I guess.
Yeah.
But in that case, when you chose that.
And I, like you were saying at the beginning of this section, I think that Rama is just trying to get a beat on who Garnet is.
Yeah, like what am I getting myself into?
By posing what do you choose there, who is this person that I'm aligning myself with? I'm going to do it anyways because we need to fight against Braun.
Right.
But
and she's got summons.
Who are you? Who is it that I'm going to be entrusting myself to? So right after this section, Lindblum is in the distance. So the Gargant had brought us past Lindblum.
Yeah.
Now we're kind of running towards it as it's being attacked. Now it's being attacked by Alexandria, and there is another summon that
summon
called,
looks crazy.
This is Atomos. Which just like sucks in a bunch of people, and they just like go flying into its mouth. Another pretty horrific scene there.
Oh yeah.
It is not totally destroyed.
No.
In the same way that Cleyra was. It's actually more or less intact. Damaged, but more or less intact.
There was, I think, a couple districts where it's like, okay, you can't go here anymore.
Yeah.
But for the most part, what happened essentially was Cid surrendered the city.
Yeah.
So as Braun was attacking, Cid had everyone lay down their arms. And so Braun let things go and did not attack or did not break it, I guess. But all of her soldiers are now in Lindblum, basically calling the shots.
Yeah.
But Cid is still there. Cid did not die.
Right.
So we end up breaking in, making our way into Lindblum, and then we get to meet with Regent Cid up at the top. And this is another moment where Vivi, once again, Vivi's with us. It's like we forget. I at least as I'm playing, it's like I forget that he's part of this, class of beings that are not good. Right? And so we're running with Vivi, and then all of a sudden it stops, and Zidon's like, hey, Vivi, you should stay here. And Vivi's like, why? I'm going to go see Regent Cid. And Zidon's like, look, if you are walking around the city, people are either going to kill you or be confused, and you're going to scare people. And Vivi's like, okay. He readjusts his hat, and he kind of walks away, but he gets captured anyways by the Lindblum guard. And then we go up to see Regent Cid, and Vivi ends up being brought in later where they're like, guys, we caught a spy, we caught a traitor. And Cid is like, no, he's just dressed like that. He's actually a spy for our team. He's a good guy. Don't worry about it. Which was, I think, a good way to diffuse the situation. But yeah, this is where we essentially learned that Cid has forfeited the entire city and that Queen Braun has basically taken down the last realm that could really meaningfully stand against her in her pursuit of controlling the entire continent. And so once Lindblum becomes a vassal state for her, then she is now queen of the whole continent.
Yeah.
Right? And so she finally achieved that by means of these summons.
Yeah. So, essentially Cid saved the city by surrender. It was a strategic surrender.
Yeah.
But when we actually get up there and get to talk to him, he basically mentions that there is a way to get to an outer continent.
Right,
and
some extra place.
We believe Kuja, this guy who is somehow influencing the queen, came from that outer continent.
Right.
And that if we are going to ever get out of this situation, we need to destroy this evil at its root. I think that's a really important word there, which is Kuja more so than Braun.
Right.
We don't have the power to fight Braun right now, but Kuja's getting his resources and
his weapons,
influence from somewhere outside of the Mist Continent. And in order for us to form a strategy on how to fight back, we need to know where that's coming from. We need to cut off that supply in order to give ourselves a chance even to resist. So we want you, a small party, to go to the outer continent and find out where he's getting all of his money, where he's getting all of his weapons, where he's, where he's getting all of this. Stop him, and then that supply being cut off from Braun, then we can start, thinking about a counterattack.
Right.
So we go back to the marsh, which is where this tunnel, the fossil rue, which leads from the Mist Continent, connects it to the outer continent. Get Kina back again.
on our way there too, Regent Sid starts to kind of like disable the trolleys in the city. So the Alexandrians are kind of trying to ransack the city and take all the valuable stuff and ship it off. And as they're loading one of their ships, all of a sudden a trolley stops working, and the guards are looking at each other like, where are the trolleys? How come it's not running? And one of them says, well, I don't know. All I heard was this weird guac guac sound. And then the trolleys just stopped working. So he has sabotaged his own transportation within the city. So it's difficult for them to, for the Alexandrians to do what they want to do. So they're going to have a harder time ransacking the city. And then he kind of, shows us this way to get, out of the city and to Q's Marsh. And what's so funny about that is that we show up and there's Quina just like trying to catch frogs, but sucks at it. She sucks at it sucks at catching frogs. And so we're like, hey, you can come along with us, right? And as we're going through the grass, you mentioned before, like that screen where you just see the grass moving, you don't really see the characters. All of a sudden, Quina's just like, frogs, and just runs off to the side. And it's like, oh, great. Guess we got to go follow her. And then we get all the way to essentially, and Kina still can't catch any of the frogs, but runs right into essentially the opening for this network. It's kind of like a maze, this network of tunnels. And they say there's gargants in here, but they're less tame.
Yeah, they're wild.
Yeah, wild.
Gargants.
And we talked to one of the guys in there, and he's just kind of working, but he tells us no one's ever really been through the maze all the way to the end before. And this was kind of like, there's stuff you have to do to get through there, but it wasn't that hard. Like if there's a way to like I'm sure merchants would have figured this out forever ago, but they didn't. Everyone just stays on the continent of mist. And so, we just need to use the gargants to essentially transport us all the way through. And the first thing that we say once we get to the very end of the maze, right, and we're into the new continent, Zidane goes, wait, where's the mist? There is no mist on this other continent. And what's the name of it? I wrote it down. Condipetier?
Yeah, right.
Condipetier. Don't know exactly how that's meant to be pronounced. But we show up on a completely new continent. And it's like, there's no mist. There is no mist. But there is a place that looks kind of misty, and it's over by this massive tree.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. But other than that, this is not a continent of mist the way that the other continent is.
Yeah.
Right? How is that possible? It should be that the whole world should be suffering this problem. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
Not here.
So we will come back. I think we're going to leave off there, but we will come back and talk about Lonnie and the fight.
That's
that
right. That happens
there.
in the tunnels.
One thing that I did want to note too is that the Gargant we rode from Trino to Alexandria, there was a rail. It seemed to be a man-made rail that was constructed for that purpose.
I see what you mean.
But the Gargants, the wild Gargants in these tunnels, they are walking on roots.
A root.
Like tree roots, essentially. So there are tree roots that essentially made these tunnels.
Yeah.
And that's why they're maze-like and why it's difficult to navigate and know which goes where, and there's certain switches you got to flip, and water will come out of one way and block that way but not the other. So it's kind of a maze to navigate, but it's because these are natural tree roots that delved all of these tunnels.
That's pretty
so
cool.
We will return to talk about this, and then we will do the outer continent all the way to the end of Disc 2 next time as well. So we'll be doing Conde Petit, the Black Mage Village, Madain Sari, and the Aoife Tree all next time, as well as Fossil Root. We'll talk about Lonnie and more about Fossil Root as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying this. This is probably the longest podcast series we've done since Final Fantasy X, I want to say.
Yeah, probably.
So hopefully you guys are cool with it going on as long as it is. We have some other content, like we said, Death Stranding 2 and some other things that we're working on behind the scenes. The Final Fantasy retrospective's coming. So look forward to that, and we will see you next time. Peace.